Okay. Yo.
Yeah. What? Who are you? This is my podcast now.
Nani?
It feels weird. It's been so long since we've both been on the everyone's probably like, "Oh, what is happening?
Like,
Wait
did
a
they
minute.
break up? Like,
Is this how this has always been?" Yeah. Is this our what is this our Get Back record that's happening?
Yeah.
Are they going to do a Disney documentary?
Yeah, it has been a tumultuous last few weeks for both Gabe and I, and yeah, it's been a minute since we've been
I'd say
able to catch up.
eventful.
Yeah, eventful. Yeah, well,
Tumultuous sounds
that has a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, no, it's been a very eventful. I mean, tumultuous.
it's
in the
been torture.
This last week, I got like laryngitis and I lost my voice, and that is not fun.
How'd you find it?
It
Was it on the lam?
it was on the land.
Is it like a mile from the Canadian border? You had to track it down.
The only reason I know what On the Lam is, it's from the Netflix adaptation of a series of unfortunate events where they talk about that several times. And yeah, even now you can probably still hear that my voice is still like not 100%. But
Yeah, I can hear a little bit.
yeah, did you all know? Here's a fun fact. Fufo fun fact number 37. You should look up the previous 36 because they exist. When you have laryngitis or when you lose your voice, did you know you're not supposed to whisper? And that's because it strains your vocal cords and your throat a lot more than if you want to talk, you're supposed to just use your normal talking voice. But then when you're talking, it'll sound like this because things are coming in and out. It's been a trip this last
Okay.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It just feels like one of those things where it's like you're not supposed to sorry for the description, but like there's like this triangle of death on your face that you're not supposed to like pop zits in because it's like too close to your like sinus cavity and like it could like easily
really?
create an infection to get into your brain or something. Yeah, so you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to like use whatever, but like anything that's like outside of that, so like in down in here or like in here it's fine, but like not on your nose and not on your face because it like could be easily infected or something.
Wow.
The things you learn when you're 32 that you just did recklessly when you were in your 20s, like reheating rice multiple times, like it's a dangerous game.
Like, okay, so let me tell you, like, real quick. I come from a family where we eat a lot of rice. That was never an issue.
I know, but like you're just like riding on the brink of death, basically.
Yeah.
Like just so
mean,
close. Like I didn't realize it. I mean, I usually was just disgusted by reheated food after one time anyway. So
yeah.
if I didn't eat it after the first reheat, I just tossed it because I'm just like, this is too gross. I don't want to.
I feel that.
Eat it. I want my stuff fresh. You know what I
feel
mean?
that. So real quick, so while we were kind of like doing a cross country, CONUS, Continental US baton pass for recording episodes. Yeah, how did you like the episodes? How do you think those came out?
I thought it was funny that you talk about how you can't do accents at all.
I
And you
thought
just
you'd like that
react
one.
to them.
I
Yeah.
thought you'd like that one.
That's
I mean, like they're so bad, it's not even, you can't even find like a tinge of like, oh, okay, I see he's trying. Like, but the thing is, I am trying.
right. Well, I think they come out in interesting and random ways, and most of I think for me, I think it's just a combination of like being a kid and not getting too much opportunity to like talk to adults. Or talk, or like I was a really talkative person, and so being
Sure.
told not to talk was like, okay, well, what am I gonna do?
Mhm.
So like I would just listen to the way people talked, and I just seemed to have a good ear. I could pick up on, they're not perfect. I don't have perfect accents, but like I can, I have characters that I will slip into when I'm telling a story. So if somebody's being like a dumbass on the road, I'm just like, whoa, oh man. Dude,
Yeah.
like I missed that corner. Huh?
Oh, missed the apex, bro.
My new one My new one though is from this page. I think it's called like Backlot or something, and I think I sent it to you. And it was like the semi truck that was like flashing its cartoon semi
Dude,
truck flashing its
yes.
lights. It's like,
Yes.
get on my way, Lermo. I just did 15 hours at the ball Christmas Fabry. Like that's just like my new one because I deal with those guys every day driving, talking about
Oh,
driving
dude.
into my commute at work. So,
Absolutely.
um,
It's boncas.
yeah. But yeah, no, I think like the, it's hard to record by yourself. It's hard to
Mm,
talk to nothing, nobody. I mean, technically you are talking to people, but it's like they're not
like,
actively there to like react to what you're
sure.
saying. Um, and that sometimes you don't. I think like almost you just need like a little self laugh
Hmm.
track to play
Yeah.
when you make a joke to make you feel good.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
or something. Actually, shout out to Race Roadie with Reagan, because
Yeah.
she records her episode solo and she
Hmm.
kills it every single time, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm sitting here recording solo. I'm just like, oh my God, how does she do this? Speaking of
Yeah.
which, we should actually have her back on,
We should.
to talk
Yeah.
about the IndyCar season because this has been a spicy season, and
Hmm.
I know we're talking about the Spanish GP today, but I think we should have her on to kind of just have like a quick breakdown later on, and I want to get your thoughts too about today's race, IndyCar race,
I
towards
haven't
the end
seen
of
it
this.
yet.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet? Okay,
Not
all right.
yet.
Well,
No.
we can
I
we
was
can at
gonna
least
watch
give
it
the.
after.
You can watch that. Okay, all right, all right.
Yeah, because we were just like we did a lot of shopping and stuff, but like
Mm,
no, 100%. Like I do like I'm planning on watching it, and I can. I'm just gonna say it right now
yeah.
as the Spanish Grand Prix was going on, I just sat there and I thought like I can't wait to watch IndyCar
No, Michael, this is so
because
dumb.
so here's the thing. I mean, obviously, I want to talk about the Spanish Grand Prix because
Yeah,
we should. Um, but I did what you recommended, and I started listening to the F1 TV feed with David Croft, or not
yeah,
David Croft,
yeah. David Coulthard.
David Coulthard,
Hmm.
and I forget the other guy's name.
It's Alex Jacques and Julian
Yeah.
Palmer.
So,
Yeah.
so here's the thing.
Uh-oh.
I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it right now. Okay,
Okay.
because on the one hand, I appreciate that they have a more measured approach to when things
Hmm.
happen. So, like, oh, somebody passes somebody on track, and it's like, oh, and he makes that pass, and it was very clean, instead
Hmm.
of he passed him on the 10. It's
Hmm.
just like, okay, calm down. You know what I mean? Like, there are elements where it's just like, I appreciate that they're not like losing their mind over every maneuver.
Sure.
But
Sure.
at the same time, it's like not having that reaction to stuff at times just it makes everything feel really
Like lame. Yeah. Like
especially when it gets into
procedural.
the yeah, especially when it gets into the DRS train and then you hear,
Yeah.
David
Yeah.
Coulthard be like, "That's F1 in 2024. He passed him. It's amazing." I'm like, it was like the first pass in
Hmm.
like 18 laps. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's one of those things where it's just like we talk about like how every sport has average games that just come and go, and then
Hmm.
that's what it is. Not every game is this huge, exciting,
Right.
explosive
Spectacle.
thing, but it doesn't make it any more palatable. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Than like just a situation where you're
So,
just like sitting there and nothing's happening.
so what I'm hearing is that when you're having your milk toast, you don't want a milk toast announcer telling you about the milk toast you're having, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather have someone talk to you about it as if you're eating cinnamon toast crunch with like extra sugar dumped in.
I mean, yeah, I would rather have somebody trying to sell me milk toast as if it was like flaming hot Cheetos than like than like if
Yeah.
it was just like hey, it is what it is, man. You know what I mean? Um like
It ain't what it
and
is,
that's
man.
like that's something I will say with like IndyCar and like Lee Diffie is this is like every time something happens on track, it's like, whoa, it's Pato Award coming around the corner. My wife wants to bang John Bon Jovi, like
And
it's
it all
like
comes back.
yeah, it's like that's okay, like that's ridiculous, but it's
Hmm.
it kind of has an element of excitement to it that like
Yeah,
it's like there's a balance, right? And
sure.
like I do appreciate that the F1 TV does have like,
It's more measured.
experts commentating and
Hmm.
like doing actual like, David Coulthard is a little bit more contemporary of a driver
Hmm.
than uh
Julian Palmer is the other.
no, yeah, Julian Palmer's the other, but they
Hmm.
have more than Martin Brundle. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like they're a little more. They've been in the games earlier, like sooner, like more recent,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so it feels like their sort of insight is a little more
Yeah.
insightful. You know,
Hmm.
so um, but yeah, but I think like the thing is, it's like it's kind of like it's interesting because it's like I've gone through all of those periods of watching F1
Hmm.
seemingly alone with all the boring races happening, and it's
Yeah.
just kind of like whatever, it happened,
Hmm.
but then when those super special ones happened, it was really
Just
impactful.
as you're right, right.
um but now it's like, now that we have, the culture has sort of banded its way around F1 in this way, and like we've said before, like they just expect so much excitement. I think it just ratchets up the expectation, and then when it doesn't
Hmm.
happen, it's just kind of like,
So
all right,
and so this is actually probably a really good way to segue into our discussion about the race, but this season has actually been extremely interesting, right? There's a lot of storylines going on and
Mhm.
a lot of expectations that are in place, right? There's the expectation that Red Bull and Max are going to just sweep the floor with everyone, right? There's the expectation that Lewis is going to have like his revenge season. Well, maybe that's just me making it up as a Lewis stan. That there's
Mhm.
going to be like this revenge season with Mercedes, and
Mhm.
Lewis is going to like grab that car by the scruff of its neck and like, drag the
Mhm.
thing around the track and get some points.
Right.
There's the expectation that Lance Stroll is finally going to, get kicked off the team and someone good will actually be able to drive that second Aston Martin, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
these storylines and these threads that we're tracing throughout the season. And I think the results have kind of shown that too, right? Whether you're looking at
Mhm.
qualifying positions, um, race wins, not as much, right? Because I don't think the story, like race wins do not tell the full story, right? I
Right.
think qualifying does a better job of that.
Mhm.
And again, y'all, that's why I say qualifying is for the nerds. Wait, casuals, nerds, dweebs. Yeah, nerds, right.
Mhm. Right.
How can we forget our own thing? But
Right.
um, yeah, like we have had four different race winners, right? This season. That's way more than last season, right? So
Yeah.
arguably, this like just from what we've seen of these last like was it nine races? This is the ninth race. We have had a lot more excitement, a lot more change up, a lot more switch up versus last season at this point. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, I think for those that are finding things a little stale like that, this is actually a really like mix up of a season, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so actually
Contrasting
let's
to last year, the
contrasting to
mix.
last year, absolutely, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I think it's good for people to kind of see like this is how the sport goes. It ebbs and flows, like, so um but actually, okay, before we hop into talking about the Spanish GP, um, we need to talk about some of this news because, whoa, there were some wild headlines that hit before even the race weekend even started off, right?
Yeah.
I think the
Mhm.
biggest one was the fact that Flavio Briatore is returning to
Mhm.
the F1 grid. Oh my God. Okay, so Gabe,
Yeah.
for those that are for the uninitiated, let's haze them and let them know who Flava Flav is here and like
Who
what
Flavio flavor? Yeah.
yeah Flavio Flav who he is and what he represents in the sport.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, all you really have to know why this is such a weird controversy of a thing is that uh, Crashgate.
Yeah.
If you don't know the details of Crashgate, we covered it on an episode a long time ago, but it's definitely easily Googleable. The layman's short-term version is basically Renault manufactured a race result win for Renault with Alonso, and basically the architect of this, the orchestration of this, women race manipulating win
Yeah.
was Flavio
Yeah, Flavio.
Briatore. And he subsequently, it was him and I forget the other guy's name. But basically,
The second
uh,
driver?
no, the second team principal who was basically like second in
Mm,
command for this.
yeah, I can't remember his name
I
either.
think it was like, it wasn't James, Fowles, no. I had it in here somewhere, but yeah, no, basically like he orchestrated the whole thing.
Hmm.
And Pat Simmons, that was it.
Yeah.
Pat Simmons was the other guy, and what happened was they manufactured this race win by having one of their drivers crash, which like forced a safety car,
Hmm.
and it played into their favor, and blah blah blah. And he and Pat Simmons were banned from F1 because of it. Because that's cheating. Like that is cheating. That is putting a driver in and potentially spectators in danger. Um, Also, like with the amount of money that it costs to repair the
Hmm.
car, I mean, that's damages, right? And yeah, sure, it was 15 or so years ago. That doesn't matter. I mean, it like he's
Yeah.
coming in as like the Alpine's saving grace, right?
Mm.
And it's like the same people are in charge essentially that
Yeah.
when this was happening. And
It's
so
like,
it's just like why would you do this? Like what, you know what I mean? It's like it
yeah.
would be like, oh man, like I can't, I'm a struggling R&B artist, and I'm gonna bring in the big guns, so welcome R. Kelly to
Yeah.
my,
R. Kelly and
to be
Chris
my
Brown.
producer,
Yeah.
yeah, to be my producers for this record, like let's get the Lost Prophets involved, it's like this,
Oh,
it's like
oh,
no, 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 like
oh,
I right, but the point
oh.
is made, right? It's just like
Yeah.
this is a horrible decision.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Like
Absolutely.
this. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
but like as the race said, his return quote erodes the final bit of Renault's F1 credibility,
100%.
which yeah, I think it's just they're just continuously smacking themselves into a wall head first,
I mean,
and then asking why nothing's changing.
they did say that they wanted to be the Ferrari of France, right? And they are definitely the 2017 Ferrari of France. Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
The other big thing was that there was this email sent out to the Mercedes team
Hmm.
where there are some death threats that are associated with this email, I believe, from what I've seen. And police had to get involved, where Mercedes was being accused of
Hmm.
purposely sabotaging Lewis
Yeah.
and his stature within the team, right? And like giving him a
Hmm.
bad car, all this kind of stuff, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing to have like a conspiracy theory and think that, right? It's another thing to then go ahead and like blow up the cell phone towers thinking that's it's the source of COVID, right? So
Right.
that's what we don't want to do here, right? And
Hmm.
that seems to be what has happened here, where
Hmm.
someone is like, making death threats towards Mercedes team. So this is just like this is bonkers. I mean,
Yeah, man.
people
Yeah.
have like we've talked about this before, right? That I'm a Lewis stan, Gabe's an Alonso stan, right?
Hmm.
And I like to use the word stan. Well, granted, like the origin of stan, right? Coming from Eminem's song, right? Like, kind of means like a really like nuts fan, right? Someone who's like over the top, right? But like the word fan, I think people forget is short for fanatic, right?
Hmm.
And it is true. Like I think within the fan bases or the fanatic bases of a lot of these drivers or teams, there is an element of, you have like some people in there who are just next level with like their dedication and love for a team or a driver to the point that they're willing to do some wild stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it makes
Yeah.
no sense because that's not really being in the world of the living, right? Being in
Hmm.
reality. And it's really unfortunate that this happened that, someone feels that they need to take this upon themselves to like threaten like the lives of people who work at a team like this German company over in Europe. Like who cares? Like this is
Yeah.
sport of
Well.
millionaires and billionaires. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
we're just watching people race cars.
Well, that was the thing I was trying to figure out with the email, because from the article I read, it looked as though what the person who sent the email was suggesting that the sabotage that they were, perpetrating against Lewis Hamilton was
Hmm.
potentially life threatening, and that was where that comes from, and not that like they were
Mm.
threatening anybody. But then Toto Wolff is like said, well, they talked about death, so we must find them, and
Yes.
it's like, okay, wait a minute. So I still don't think that they should be aggressively coming at teams like this, because I think you're right. Like
Right.
having, the sort of fanatical element of these intense fan bases is just
It's
um
not good for the
it's
sport.
not good. I mean, another example I wanted to talk about is this whole thing that happened with Tio Percher in IndyCar.
Yes.
So
Exact same
he
thing.
he gets involved in a little racing incident with Canapino, right?
Hmm.
So like, I mean, Canapino lost 3 places, right? It didn't end his race, and it didn't end Theo's race, right? It was just that, like, he's a beginner. Detroit was a really tight, weird track, right, with a bunch of like bumpy
Yeah,
roads,
it's a
right?
street.
he
It's a street track.
he missed his braking zone. He went into the corner and he bumped Canapino out, and he lost 3 places. Didn't crash, didn't destroy his car, but yet he was getting death threats from their fans. Like, he was getting like just threats of violence, death threats from the Canapino side. And then Canapino decided that he was going to just lean into it and just demand an apology from Theo Percher, and like
Hmm.
not be like, oh, it's whatever. And then so they had to put him on leave to get his
Yep.
head straight. And then they ended their commercial attachment with Hungo's Hollinger Racing.
Hmm.
And then for some reason they just replaced Theo Percher with Nolan
Oh
Siegel.
my God.
Like,
Oh my God.
what
This
is
guy can't catch a
happening?
break. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It,
It's just
it
like, I think like this also ties into something, and I'm curious what you think about this.
yeah.
I think that a lot of the reason why we're seeing all these crazy decisions from teams
Hmm.
is because I think that the new, like, kind of focus by new fans, and like the new televised nature and the popularity of these sports kind of having a surge, I
Hmm.
think is putting a lot of pressure on teams to like have the storylines, have the
Oh,
success
absolutely.
like immediately,
Absolutely.
because this never happened really before. I mean, like, people got maybe replaced, but like
Mm.
it wasn't commonplace. You know what I mean? Like, they would at least finish out a season before they were replaced,
Yeah.
provided they didn't have some injury that caused them to stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, truth be told, right? It's hard for us to put ourselves in the shoes of media from 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like I guess the only real way to compare that would be just kind of taking a look at like the average length of like a driver contract, and like
Hmm.
just kind of like what the general vibes are, right? But I
Hmm.
think just to kind of cap that is to say that I think right now McLaren across the board is just viewed as just like the big bad, right? Just
Kind of. Yeah.
to do that to Teo, like this guy, like he tweeted out that he was really excited to participate in an upcoming
Hmm.
race, and then finds out the next day and then deletes the tweet. Like, oh
Hmm.
man, dude. And
Yeah.
this isn't like a DeVries situation, right?
No.
Like DeVries wasn't performing, right? Like there's actual hard concrete data
Hmm.
that
Right.
shows, nope, you're not performing on this team, you're gone. Cool.
Hmm.
But here, like Teo,
Theo was
like
doing well.
yeah, he just got signed, told that he'd be driving for the rest of the season, doing well, and then gets into, this is a driving incident. This stuff happens, you know what I mean? Like that's what
Hmm.
racing is, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you have rule books to kind of govern like what happens penalty wise and all this kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
then death threats,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff, and then they get axed. Ooh.
Yeah. I think Nolan Siegel, I mean, great, talented guy, puts in a lot of effort. Awesome. But I think that, like, the reason why he got thrust into this position is because he had the
So,
failed attempt at the Indy 500. He
mm,
almost made it in, and then he replaced Canapino for the last Indy race, after the whole thing with Pacher was happening,
mm,
right? And then now all of a sudden, like, Canapino's back, and they're just like, well, okay, like, we're just kicking out Tio. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I
yeah.
think like somebody said, what was it? Somebody, I think it was Scott McLaughlin on
Mm,
Twitter, was just like, I think he made some comment like, oh, like, there was some, like, Twitter feud between him and
yeah.
Tony Kanaan, where they were like, he made some comment about, like, it's like, I hope you can find your race pace amongst all that contract paperwork or something like that, because like literally, like, seriously, it's just like they have had how many contracts disputes have they? I mean, they're still currently suing Alex Palou
Hmm.
for his breach of contract, which, like, Pelot better win a 500 or something, because he does not have the money to pay what they're trying to get out
Hmm.
of him. I don't even know, like, if, I mean, I think the whole thing with Piastri is settled at this point. I mean, even though that was like with Alpine, but even still, it's just like, yeah, I don't know what's happening. Like, is this just Zach Brown trying to be the most American team possible,
Oh
like by
man,
just suing
like
everybody all back and
litigation.
forth? Like, yeah, I mean, for real. Like,
Yeah,
and it's frustrating because
feels like
honestly,
it.
like Pato Award, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, those guys, like I love them as drivers.
Hmm.
I'm super stoked for all of them to win anything.
Yeah,
When like Pato almost won the 500, I mean, I was really disappointed. I was
yeah,
so excited to see
he was
him win it.
close. He was
Yeah,
close. Yeah,
yeah.
and
But,
s- and speaking of McLaren drivers that almost had it, Norris should have won that today, but he
yeah.
didn't.
Yeah,
And
they're
it's
blaming like he's wasn't it part of it there was like a fire in the trailer or something
dude, oh
that
my
caused
God.
some of that?
That's
What
the other thing
happened with
we
that?
forgot to talk about that. Yeah, so there was some fire that broke out in the McLaren like motorhome, like F1, not on the IndyCar side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his race suit was in there apparently. And so he I think I don't know because I didn't watch the free practices this weekend, but I don't know if he was actually able to partake in or participate in free practice 3. Yeah, so it was pretty hot. Pretty hot
Hmm.
situation there. But yeah, let's hop into the Spanish GP. Not a whole lot to talk about here, but qualifying was really exciting.
Hmm.
But like my main takeaway from quali was just the fact that Mercedes clearly they have some pace in the car now. They figured something out with the car,
Hmm.
but man, it is so finicky, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it can literally be the like I don't know, like they'll have their first attempt at a hot lap, at a flying lap, and like it's a really good attempt. And then second attempt, and then it's just like, oh, super mid, like not really there. And
Hmm.
then like Lewis and Russell are like, just bringing it in last minute to actually get it into Q2, right? And the same thing to get into Q3. And it's just like, oh my God, like what like for some reason they seem to not be able to eke out the performance of that car consistently. And that's been the issue
Hmm.
with Mercedes.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I don't know. I mean, the race ended up being better for them, right? But
Hmm.
I think it also helped too that Red Bull wasn't on top of it as they typically are, right? I mean, their pit stops are great during the race. That was fine, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think the only other big thing really Norris bringing in that surprise pole, like holy crap,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
like what like tight margins,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
this goes to show that Red Bull is not untouchable, and I think we're in for some real big surprises this season.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I think we talked about 2025 being sort of a toss away year,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just like everyone's waiting for 26,
Hmm.
right? But I do think that 25 could very much be. I mean, I think it's going to end one of two ways. Either Red Bull will, win, Max will win this year, and Red Bull will win this year,
Hmm.
and then next, but like close,
Hmm.
and then next year, like either everybody will just give up trying and like focusing all their attention for 26, and so the 25 season will just be another Red Bull repeat, whatever,
Hmm.
because nobody bothered to advance the car anymore, or McLaren will catch up.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, like almost make it this year, like almost get it this year, and then next year, like it's
Hmm.
like a tight battle. So
Yeah.
I think 25 has the potential to be cool.
Yeah.
I just think that it just depends on how the development process ebbs and flows. And I mean,
Right.
I was sitting there like watching this race. I mean, quali was pretty good. I mean, it was interesting to see that like the Alpines were actually did pretty good. Like they
Yeah.
qualified pretty high.
Yeah.
VCarb and Williams were just like back
Yeah.
down at the bottom again, and it's weird to see how like you get these storylines of things improving and then just fading away. Um, and like Hulkenberg had like a good showing too. So like
Hmm.
the Haas has some pace, even though Magnussen got more penalties during the race. We'll get to that, um, but
Every time.
he's quiet quitting. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like. I think like qualifying had a decent setup for an interesting race, and then
Yeah.
the race happened, and there was like a few things that were interesting, but like it wasn't like sustainable enough for me to feel like, oh, like, this is great. It was just sort of like I just like kind of I was focusing on building a Lego thing.
Hmm.
And then when I heard some of the commentators' voices raised, then I actually looked up to see what happened because
Hmm.
most of the rest of it was just,
Hmm.
it was just played out in strategy.
Yeah, procedural. Yeah, yeah, when it got to the race, like right off the bat, like shout out to Russell for making that super exciting because
Hmm.
I thought what was going to happen is that Verstappen would just overtake Norris and then just run away with it, right, and build up a
Hmm.
2 second lead after the end of lap one. But that's not exactly what happened to me, at least immediately. Russell had a really, really awesome overtake on both Verstappen and Norris on the outside, which is great to see.
Hmm.
Like I really like seeing Russell just kind of race like he's got nothing to lose, you know?
Hmm.
And it's been making some excellent, excellent races so far this season.
Yeah.
Been making four, sorry. Um, and yeah, and Hamilton was out there too. Like they were able to kind of figure things out with the Mercs, which was nice to see because at least it made it a little bit more competitive up there because like remember this time last year we were talking about the Astons and we were talking about how Aston Martin might get a win, right?
Yeah.
And just like what you're saying about like performance comes in, increases and then they just fall off. Aston Martin has just been shh
Hmm.
this entire season, right?
Yep.
And it's dude, it's kind of it's a bummer. I really thought those would be the guys. I really thought Aston Martin would be able to take the results from last year and improve upon that and be where
Hmm.
McLaren is for this season.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Alonso's not particularly happy, and I don't blame him.
Oh yeah,
And then you got Lance Stroll, who keeps claiming that the performance difference between him and Alonso is like, you know,
it's much
it's like,
smaller.
oh, it's not as big as you think, and then it's like, but still, he is behind Alonso like the overwhelming majority of the time, like
Yeah,
two, at least three or two to three places, like at best. A lot of the times he's just like nowhere to be found, and
yeah,
Alonso's up like at least in the top 10.
yeah.
So it is, it's still nepotism is still, I think, one of the major problems that Aston Martin has. I think that they are losing a lot of developmental potential by not having a driver
Big time.
that has winning experience. That's also, that's not just Alonso,
Or it's just talented, right?
or just talented.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's an I'm just I don't really know when the nightmare is going to be over.
Hmm.
Um, but it's got to end sometime
Yeah.
because I'm just hoping it's not like another 10 or 15 years of Lance Stroll trying to just live in his dad's. I think his dad's going to sell the team before,
Before he
I think
leaves.
if I think if Lawrence Stroll sells Aston Martin to somebody else, I think the first thing they're going to do is drop Lance. I don't think you have
Mm.
any kind of, unless Daddy Warbucks is still giving the bucks for the team, even though he sells it, which I don't think he would have any reason to, because he just got a payday. Um, yeah, I think they'd probably just drop Lance, but
Yeah.
who knows? Um, yeah, George did a great. That was a great overtake by George. Norris kind of pushed Max into the grass a little bit, which I think allowed George to kind of keep up some momentum and
Hmm.
kind of pass around him. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, but then Max just ends up passing George on lap three and
Yep.
just down the road.
Yep.
I was at least happy to see that Norris and Russell kind of kept Max honest,
Yes. Yes.
which is good. I'm very happy for that, but yeah, just like these cars are too, they just get so spread out so quickly,
Yeah.
and it's just like we need to find some way to keep them together, keep them bunched,
Hmm.
close, or at least have like at least clusters like kind of sticking around that can
Yeah.
pass. But we don't, we just end up we just they end up spreading out, and
Hmm.
I don't, and I wonder if part of it is because the drivers have to be as careful, because of like if you contrast it with IndyCar, right? Like IndyCar, there's a lot of bumping, a lot of like
Sure.
like
Like
they're
some
a little more
shunts.
rough and tumble, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's just because they know that they can, right? Because like the car is more robust that it can hold up. And also that they don't get punished every 2 seconds if they just scrape somebody's, wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that? Like, where
Mm.
would you want to be in that sort of conversation with F1?
Yeah, I honestly would prefer a robust car, right? A car that, because there's a car that can handle a hit or two.
Mm,
Um, like I can think back to previous races where you see someone get pulled into their pit box for a repair, and they're just, oh yeah, park the car, box it. Like that sucks. I mean, just like
oh, winglet fell off.
yeah, you don't
Okay,
have like
we're
another
done.
like wing that you can just put on real quick and like, and but again, right? The way the system, the point system, the actual reward system of the sport is not built to encourage that, right?
Right.
Because you're not getting points, P1 all the way through P20, right? You're getting points P1 through P10. And I know people say like, "Oh, well, this isn't a participation trophy sport." But at the same time, like that has real impact on the
Mm,
teams in the back marker teams, right?
right.
Like if like can I actually say that Sauber is or Kick Sauber, whatever the heck you want to call them, that Kick Sauber is a better team than Haas or Haas is a better team than Kick Sauber, like because of whether or not one of them got a point in P10 at a race from the beginning of the season. Like
Right.
that doesn't tell the whole story. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's really
Yeah.
about like, all right, can I see incremental progress and incremental change over the course of the season, right?
Hmm.
So maybe Sauber ends up 2 positions ahead of Haas because they were just that much better at finishing at a consistent position. Like
Hmm.
that needs to be rewarded too, And
Right.
I don't know, it's
Yeah.
frustrating, right? Because I would love to see all 20 cars out there on track just getting out there, right? I mean, look at NASCAR races; they're beating in some of the side paneling with 2x4s to make
Hmm.
sure that things hold together and they can just finish a race out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be cool to see.
I mean, I would be willing to sacrifice speed. You know, I would be willing to sacrifice lap time if
Mm,
it means that we get close racing. Because I mean, honestly, from a televised audience like perspective,
hmm
you can't tell the difference between 10 miles an hour. You know what I mean? Like when you're
mm,
watching it, like you don't see the difference, right? They look like they're going fast because they are, but
yeah,
you can't feel that difference unless you're at the track. But even then, I don't even know if anybody could really feel that.
right.
And so I'd be willing to sacrifice some lap time if it meant that they could race closer, if they could get into, if they could push the limits a little bit and try and sort of, force some passes, like, obviously that are fair enough,
Yeah.
but not like without being too reckless. But yeah, it's just like frustrating how like there'll just be a little like a winglet, like a little piece
hmm
of carbon fiber, like that big,
Yeah.
will fly off of a wing, and all of a sudden it's like they've lost 30% of their downforce. It's like why?
Yeah.
How is
Yeah.
your 30% of your downforce like just based around this one little thing?
Mm,
Like it's like everything is so optimized for that.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
simplifying, I think, is the way to go. And I
Yeah.
do worry with the new regulations with I'm foreseeing, we're talking about they have the active arrow on the front wing and the
hmm
back wing, right? I mean, does this mean that if somebody bumps somebody with the
Oh
front
yeah.
wing,
Then yep.
right?
hmm
Then like it's just not going to work, and then all of their advantage is gone.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when one wing breaks but the other one doesn't? Like that's a dangerous situation. Like how are they going to do this? Like I don't
hmm
even know. I think they should just get rid of all the active arrow stuff, just do a push to pass, just give them a little button that pushes that gives them a little more power like IndyCar does,
Yeah.
because there's no wings moving, there's no mechanical parts to break.
Or
You
fan
know what I
boosts,
mean?
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And I think and you're kind of speaking to something too. Oh, let me come back to that. I was gonna say, as far as like the future regs are concerned, it's going in the right direction, right? Like
yeah.
the actual like chassis and like
Mhm.
geometric envelope of the car is being reduced somewhat, right? And the weight of the car is
Right.
decreasing too, so that's good.
Right. They look
Um,
cool too.
yeah, they look really cool. I think it's a good step in the right direction, right? But we need to go, I think, even further, right? Because again, we talk about this all the time, but you're gonna come into Monaco again, where it's still procedural and you're not really doing any overtaking or any overpassing,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But I was gonna say that it's funny how like these small things can make such a big impact on the race, right? And that's what I
Hmm.
was gonna say about this Spanish Grand Prix in general, right? This is kind of just like my general thoughts on the race. Um, it sucks because Lando was on a tear at the end of the
Hmm.
race,
Yeah,
but he
he
ran
was.
out of laps to do anything, right?
Yep.
All because of like a mistake he made in the beginning of the race. And I guess that speaks to just like the elite level of of athleticism and performance that both the athlete, the driver, and the car have to be at, right? Um, that you can't make mistakes because no one else is making mistakes, right? Like if Max had
Hmm.
made a mistake, then yeah, Lando would have been able to catch up. But like
Right.
this guy's like, he's a T1000. He's not making any mistakes. You know what I mean?
No,
And
very little. I mean, he did one, I think, in turn 7, but
yeah,
he caught it. I mean, the
yeah,
guy does enough sim racing that I think he's just his reaction time is just
he's just on it. Yeah.
yeah.
And so, like the fans, viewers, we were deprived of seeing like a Lando Norris second win within one season because of what he did on the first lap, right? Where
Hmm.
he didn't have a good takeaway or take off from the line.
Yeah,
That kind of stinks. That really stinks. Like
it does.
if there
Yeah.
was something else that had been there that maybe would have given him an edge somehow, right? Like I was even to the point thinking of, oh man, what if they increased the DRS like window to 1.25 seconds, right, versus 1 second, right? Like,
Mm.
I mean, I know like people always talk about, oh, DRS is way too powerful as it is and everything, but like, yeah, I'm with you. Sometimes I think about like how do you get closer racing, right,
Right.
without damaging the performance of the cars and making sure that you still damaging as far as like the worst tire wear, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Making sure that the cars can still like race, right? That they're still within earshot of one another, that something can happen, right?
Mhm. I think that what the DRS should have been, the DRS should not have been you need to be within a certain period, a certain distance of a person in
Mm,
front of you.
mm-hmm,
It should have been time based, like they do with the push to pass in IndyCar. So
mm,
like you have DRS zones, right, that you could be in.
sure.
Okay. But you only have a certain amount of time of DRS usage,
Like
right?
allotted for a race.
Allotted for a race. That way, like, yeah, Max could use it or he could save it. You could have a situation where Norris is trying to catch Max, right? He's not like, he's 3 seconds behind Max, but he uses the DRS in that time to try and close that gap. And then Max tries to use his DRS to defend as Norris is trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get this dynamic where, like, you don't have somebody who is stuck trying to catch up. Like they have something that allows them to try and bridge that
Yeah,
gap
it's
and
variable.
then somebody to defend. But like they don't do that. Now it's just like, so what you get, that's where you get the DRS train, right?
Right.
Where it's just like people are just following each other like ants and they just use it an infinite amount, but you have to be within that range. So all a driver ahead has to do is keep somebody away from, a second, like a slightly
Yeah.
more of a second away from them, and they'll never get a chance to even try and catch up.
Right.
It shouldn't be a thing where a driver can control like that. Max shouldn't be able to control like that. I mean, yeah, it takes a lot of talent and it's skill in
Mm,
order to know how to play your opponent like that. But the drivers around should have something to defend against with that, and they
mm,
just don't. They don't
yeah.
have a way to combat Max's crazy, talented genius brain
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to do that. And I think that's where you get that imbalance, and I hope they figure this out because
Mm.
yeah, I'm not going to miss DRS. I'm going to tell you that much. I'm really not going to miss it at all.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there are rumors that, yeah, I mean, not rumors. I mean, for sure. I think it's not really like an open secret, but people want it gone, right? It's just a matter of like, how do we get there? Well, I think smaller cars, what we're saying with 26, I think is a step in the right direction for us to get to a point where maybe, we get away with it or just get away from it, I should say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, no. I mean, all right, so real quick, in short, like, what'd you think of the race? Um,
I mean,
what are your
I
vocal
think like,
vibes?
I think that Max had his typical kind of win, but I do think that like it was a little more honest than it has been before.
Yeah.
Because like Norris was catching him, he was making him push,
Hmm.
and I think like it was one of those things where like you see the little glimpses of the Mercedes improving, you see the
Yeah.
glimpse of McLaren actually being a formidable force now, but this could all just be a one-off.
Yeah.
The next race could just be complete Red Bull dominance.
Hmm.
It just so much of it depends on the track. It depends on how well everybody has, their cars tuned or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think this one was not. I mean, it would. This was a pretty. To me, this is a pretty bog standard F1 race. Like it
Mm,
wasn't. It wasn't particularly special. It wasn't particularly incredible. But it had some glimpses of excitement that could
yeah,
have been more exciting. But it just
yeah,
wasn't. So
yeah. No, I feel that. No, I think I'd agree with you. I think
yeah,
your thoughts are my thoughts exactly. So ditto.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
all right, cool.
But
Well, no, this is good. It was good to like get back and like talk about some racing and some motorsport stuff. But
yeah, yeah, we
so-
definitely look forward to talking about more stuff because I do want to hear about your rally experience too,
oh
because
yeah,
you went to that rally event. So we'll save that for the next like news episode. We'll talk about that.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to get back into the flow.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it'll be great.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to FUFO F1 or F off. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X, all at F1 or F off. You can email us. Email. Oh my God, sheesh. I mean, we've been out for so long, just like blah, 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 you know. Email us at F1 or F off podcast at gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. That really helps us out a lot. And be sure to share with the family and friends and your enemies. Do not send to Lance Stroll. Thank you.
No, don't send it to him. Peace.
Peace.